get started. So my name is Jack Hilgert. I work for the Nebraska Forest Service, and I'm our education coordinator. So the Nebraska Forest Service is really unique. We're one of 5 state forestry agencies in the country that's housed in a university. So my job is actually technically a position within the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, but I'm a statewide position, very similar to like extension, for example. And so my position as our education coordinator is mostly dedicated to being the state coordinator for Projects Learning Tree and Project WET, which you'll learn about here this morning. Both of those programs are international environmental education curriculum programs where we train educators like yourselves in any setting. So after school, during the school day with K-12 educators, early child care professionals, you name it, we train them in how to teach about the environment and how to teach about environmental issues. And so the curriculums that we have for you are only available really with a workshop or professional learning opportunity. And you'll be experiencing kind of a workshop together here this morning in our little hybrid landscape. While they play with our little presentation behind me, I want us to go ahead and stand on up if we're in the room. Oh, there we go. And well, we'll just keep talking for a little bit. Let's stand up and go ahead. And this is a quick activity from Project Learning Tree called Viewpoints on the Line. And so for our line here, we're just going to use the very front of the, let's go back to front of the room, maybe, and make a line if you feel, and if you on the edge of the line over there by the wall, go over there if you are brand new to teaching with kids outdoors. Let's say you only know working with kids outdoors in the context of taking them to recess or taking them to the park or something like that, right? You're brand new to this idea of teaching and using the outdoors to enrich curriculum. And then if you're like, I do that all the time, I teach kids outdoors every week or regularly in my work with kids, you can stand on this side of the line over here by my red wagon. So go ahead and take 30 seconds and you can go anywhere between where you feel comfortable. If you're in the Zoom chat, just feel free to chime in virtually and say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how comfortable are you with teaching outdoors and why? Just share a little bit of why. So, okay, our friends over here who are maybe farther down our line, does anyone want to raise their hand and share why they chose to come down towards the number 10 side of the scale?
So I have taught wildlife, and I've taught what it means for the kids. I've taught that along the Pooter Trail and throughout the mountains and things like that. So I really enjoy everything about nature, everything about wildlife. And so I incorporate that in everything I do.
That's amazing. Let's give her some round of applause for sharing here this morning. We'll go down here to kind of our middle area. Would one of you folks in the middle want to share? Why did you go to this tour area of the line? We can rock, paper, scissors if you want.
I've done some work with plants and soils and agronomy, so definitely familiar with kind of more of the agronomy aspect of it, but very interested in more of the environmental ed piece too.
Thanks for sharing. Let's give her a quick round of applause. And then finally here are folks more at the beginning stages who would like to share, what their thoughts are with teaching kids outdoors.
So the only experience I have like teaching kids about nature is when we do our science program. In like kindergarten, we go outside and like, what do you see? What do you hear in nature? So that's about all that I know.
Hey, you still know something though. So let's give her a round of applause. And then let's all go back to our chairs. I'll go ahead and do we have any fun sharing from the Zoom room about how comfortable they are? Great. Yeah. So that's something that I like to do. This activity actually is in the curriculum, is really focused on asking students, how do they feel about certain topics or certain ideas, right? So it's more of a middle school, elementary activity. You can ask them questions like, how do we feel about snakes, for example, on 1 to 10, or how do we feel about trees? Why do we feel that way about certain things, and getting them to discuss that in the curriculum. I like to kind of bend it for workshops because really everybody is on what I like to call an environmental education journey, right? None of us are probably over here, at least I don't think I am, at this, perfect 10, right? We're all learning and improving, and we're all learning how to do this work together. And so if you're someone who's like at that early stages, right, don't feel like you don't know anything, right? You already said, hey, I know how to teach students how to observe nature in the outdoor setting, and I know how to do that using multiple senses, right? That's a good, activity with kids. And for our folks that are way over here, right, that's something that our workshops help provide you. If you're like, hey, I'm an EE pro, is kind of what we like to joke and say, people who do environmental education all the time, right? Our workshops from Project Learning Tree and Project Wet just provide you more enriching curriculum to enrich what you're already doing, or expand or narrow in on a certain topic area. So that is what we're going to focus on today. So again, just our quick intro. We are part of the University of Nebraska, and my agency's mission is to enrich the lives of all Nebraskans by protecting, restoring, and utilizing Nebraska's tree and forest resources. So we also like to talk a little bit in workshops about why is conservation education important. So we'll go through this a little quick, but in the Zoom chat or in the room, feel free to shout out what the characters you see come across the screen. There we go. Yes, that's a little dated. Okay, now try this one. Red-tailed hawk. Yes, a bur oak. If it ain't bur oak, don't fix it. What about this guy in the corner? Close. A frog. Do we know what type of frog? What is he sitting in today? A tree. Yep, he's a Cope's gray tree frog. Does anyone know this one? It is a tulip tree. It's my favorite tree, so you get extra bonus brownie points. What type of deer do we know? White-tailed deer, yep. This one's the easiest one. Exactly. Its name is what it is. So, right, if we looked at those and we did that same exercise with your students, right, would they do as well? They might not know Leslie Knope, right? That's a show that's probably not on very much anymore, but they might not know, right, that it's an oak tree, right? They might not even know that an oak tree has acorns. They might not be able to recognize that it's a red-tailed hawk or a white-tailed deer, right? They might get it to be a bird or a deer, but may not get it more narrow, right? But how many of us know what dinosaur has 2 little tiny arms with 2 little tiny talons and likes to roar? What's T-Rex? Does anyone know the big name for that guy? Right. So if our preschoolers can know Tyrannosaurus Rex, they can know what a tulip poplar is, or what an eastern cottonwood is, or what a white-tailed deer is, right? They have an immense capacity for learning about nature, learning about the outdoors, and for learning about these complex, sometimes scientific topics, right? And so don't ever feel afraid to use that language with your students. And that's why we want to be doing this work. We also always talk about, right, in education as a pathway to future careers. According to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, green jobs, so jobs in the sustainability and environmental sectors, have grown by over 250% in the last decade. and they have the full numbers there. There's an estimated to be over 15 to 60 million additional green jobs in the United States over the next several years by 2030. So, when we are taking kids outdoors, it not only helps them learn about nature and the place where they live in their community and how to conserve those places and those animals and those resources, it also helps prepare them for future careers, right? And lots of these careers and green jobs, if we think of renewable energy, how much that sector has changed in the last 20 years. If we think about, right, how much more companies are trying to embed sustainability mindsets into their day-to-day work, right? There's probably careers that our students that are growing up right now are gonna be able to apply for and become that we don't even know exist, right? The kindergartners today in 13 years are gonna be the voters of tomorrow. And so when we do this work with them, they're also, starting to be interested and engaged in conserving nature and the outdoors, and then can bring that to their future career paths. A connection to nature also makes people want to do something, right? It's great to talk about nature and to learn about nature, right? But we ultimately want to take some sort of action piece. Does anyone know what animal that is? A tiger. And what adjective would you use to maybe describe a tiger? You can just shout out your answers or put them in the chat. Orange, fierce, striped. Beautiful. Do we have any other adjectives about maybe how common they are? Rare. I'm thinking of one more or word. Endangered. There we go. So yeah, endangered, right? A lot of times if you ask the public or even yourselves, right? If I say the word endangered species, right? That conjures up images in public consciousness of giant pandas and whales and tigers and rhinos and elephants, all of these charismatic animals that live on the other side of the earth, right? But does anyone know what this animal is? A piping plover. Let's do like snaps for our friend Colleen. She just knows all her animals before. So I promise she did not have my slides, as we could tell with the setup. But anyways, so yeah, it's a piping plover, and they're a Nebraska native endangered species, right? And so, right, when we think about conservation is not something that we have to do on the other side of the globe. It's something we can do in our own backyards. And so when you're taking kids outside to observe pollinators in your school pollinator garden, when you're talking about monarch butterflies during the monarch butterfly migration across Nebraska, you can talk about conservation and conservation action that your students can take in your programs and take in their own communities, right? This is not some abstract concept that, is really foreign almost to our kids. So what is Project Learning Tree? Project Learning Tree is a comprehensive environmental education program, is the oldest of what we call a project curriculum programs. So if you saw the Game and Parks table out there today, they are the state coordinators for Project Wild, which is a little bit younger than Project Learning Tree. And then Project Wet, I'm the state coordinator for as well. And they're kind of colloquially called the triple trifecta, the 3 project curriculums. Since 1976, PLT has reached over 138 million students and trained 765,000 educators to help them teach students how to think, not what to think about environmental issues. Most of our educators that we train across Nebraska report that they use the program at least monthly in their work with students, depending upon the context, right? Classroom teachers, formal educators, non-formal educators in after-school settings, educators that work in childcare settings. And then in Nebraska, the program is sponsored by the Nebraska Forest Service. PLT uses forests as a window to the world to increase our understanding of the complex environment, stimulate critical and creative thinking, develop the ability to make informed decisions on environmental issues, and instill the confidence and commitment to take responsible action. And again, it teaches us how to think, not what to think about nature and the environment. That's really important because the program was created in the 70s. Does anyone know what was happening in the 70s and the 60s? Something that happened all across the country? right? This week is actually the 50th anniversary of like the Clean Water Act, for example. So in the 70s, right, the United States, we had this wave of environmental consciousness with the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, all of these federal pieces of legislation that were passed to help conserve and clean our environment. And so educators like yourselves were trying to find resources and curriculum to teach their students about all of these things that were happening in the world around them. And so the U.S. Forest Service, other federal and state level agencies, industry partners from private industry, and education professionals across the country came together to create what is known as Project Learning Tree. And so we're not here to, impose an ideology or persuade a political opinion with the curriculum. What we're here to do is set students up to take in the data and science that they know exists in their local settings with their local phenomena, as well as, scientific data from scientists around the world, right, as they get older and can do research. And then also take in their own personal experience with nature and the outdoors to make informed decisions about environmental issues, right? Because that's what we want them to be doing as adults. Like I said, the kindergartners today in 13 years are going to be voting here in Nebraska. And so we want them to be, from my agency standpoint, and hopefully from all of our standpoints, to be informed when they go to make decisions, when they vote or when they are landowners in a community. As a state that's 97% privately owned, most of the conservation work in Nebraska happens on private land, not public land. And also as the future educators like yourselves in our communities and other community leaders, right? So when we teach students how to think about the environment, it's going to set them up to be successful citizens in our state in the future. Project WET is also very similar. It's a little bit younger. So Project Learning Tree kind of was the model program and is very focused on trees and forests. Project WET is focused on water education. And it was created in the 1990s and is very similar. Their mission is to advance water education to understand global challenges and inspire local solutions. And all of the activities in Project WET are based around these 7 water literacy principles. So before we dive into more of me just talking, we want to be doing something, right? We talked about that earlier. So what we're going to do is model a Project WET activity. It's one of my favorite activities called The Incredible Journey. Can anyone raise their hand if they've done this activity before? Maybe a couple people. So it is really fun. What I'm going to ask our friends to do, do we have any volunteers in the audience who would like to help me by passing out a, whatever these are called now? I know that we're not supposed to call them pipe cleaners, but to just everybody, you want to take one really fast? And then in the chat, online, what I will do is there's actually a digital version of this activity on a website that Project WET runs called discoverwater.org. So let me get that link. Just one. You just need one for this activity. So in this activity, students they act like you get to be a water droplet. So imagine that you've dropped into the environment and you are going to learn a path in order to where you're going to go. So I will put this link. There we go. I will put this link, or I guess, do I have the Zoom on here? Oh, I do not. I will just share if we can do this. And then if Colleen, could you type that link in my search bar into the chat box there? Thank you. There's digital versions of these activities as well. So our folks in the chat can just spend a few minutes while our in-person people are doing the in-person version, going through this web page on your own. So for our friends in the class, and if you are looking from Zoom, what this activity does is you set up different stations with dice and with beads, and students as a water droplet get to roll your dice, kind of a luck of the draw, right? And you are going to see the dice fall on a different sign. So this one says glacier. So if I started at the clouds, what I would do is I would first put a bead of that color on my bracelet, then roll the dice. And then when it lands on, you follow the instructions. And then some of them do say stay. So if you have to stay at that spot, you just add another bead from that color of beads before you roll the dice again to see if you move on. So does anyone in our audience here have any questions? No, you get to stand up and move around. So we're going to let's take about we'll take a couple minutes and see how many beads you can collect on our incredible journey. There are also 2 stations up at the front, and there's one at the top called groundwater table. So in case you Yep, you gotta go find the clouds. I think that one's up there.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
There are 2 over there. So one of them is animal and one is the brown one's animal. Zoom chat people, if you are done with exploring the water cycle activity on the Project Wet website, what you'll do is you'll click the link here to press play, and then the little doggo's there. You can click water cycle activity to do this activity. You can hit exit after you've gone through that and go through other activities on the right-hand side. And then if you get all the way done with that before we're done with our in-person portion, you can explore other activities by clicking the home page and explore other Project Wet lessons that are virtual on the website. Let's go ahead and use our next 2 minutes. So let's be ready to be at our tables at 11:05. Okay, friends, let's go ahead and you can collect one more bead if you like, but then head back to your places where you're learning. Our friends who are on the internet, go ahead and wrap up what you're doing and we will kind of come back together here. So let's go ahead and share at your tables or in the chat, you can share with what you experienced on the digital activity, but what were some of the areas that you got stuck in as a water droplet a lot? Clouds. Glacier, clouds. Oh, that's something great that you shared though. Can you share what you just shared?
Well, I didn't get a lot because I didn't want to be rude and reach through people. So I just waited in the back of the line.
There we go. So, but that's important. Can everybody give her a big, quick round of applause there for sharing? Okay. So, right, because one great thing about Project Learning Tree activities and why environmental education is so great for your students is because, right, we are modeling the scientific process of the water cycle, right? You were able to model a water cycle and a water droplet's journey in the cycle. You were able to create a tangible item that you can take home, right, for your programs. You also, your kids can easily use this with materials that you have at your center to teach this activity. And also, like you mentioned, it reinforces good behaviors that we want to inspire in our students, right? It gives students agency. They're independently going through the water cycle. It's not just us reciting something from a poster or from a worksheet. And they learn skills like waiting their turn, not pushing each other, not fighting over the dice, not when they don't get to their favorite color of bead, right? They don't get to green, they didn't get to yellow. That's okay, right? Coping skills without having the outcome that you desire, right? So if we think of also, right, all the ways that our students are still kind of recovering from that year of remote learning or however long you were remote learning from the pandemic, environmental education is essential to help students also develop those emotional skills, as well as those, science, math, English language arts skills, right, that they're trying to learn in the classroom every day too. So that's why when I heard that, I was like, we're going to talk about that. So, right, there were some areas, maybe, what were areas that you did not ever get to? Does anyone in the audience want to share? They can just shout out. Groundwater, soil, glacier, exactly, right? Not every water droplet in the water cycle goes in a circular motion, right? It's not just like your science textbook where there's one to the other, to the other, to the other, right? If we think of here in Kearney, right, we're in the Platte Water River Basin. And so water droplets here are constantly evaporating from the Platte River, right? If you drove by on I-80, it's pretty evaporated right now. And they're also going between the groundwater or water table down below the river, right? And the groundwater is interacting with the river and either recharging the river or taking in water from the river to recharge the aquifer. So, and that just depends on the place where you live or how the water cycle is happening in your community. So it's an easy activity that you can universally teach a concept, but also then apply it to your local phenomena or the local landscape where you live. So another activity we're going to do here from Project Learning Tree, if I could get a helper to help out with passing or two, is if you could give everybody a green sheet of paper, and I will put a box of crayons. You can use pencils and pens, because we're adults, but we might as well have colors. At your table is, I would like you to draw a tree from memory. So draw whatever, when I say draw a tree, you can draw whatever that means to you, and try and label, if you can, the parts of a tree. And you can do this at home if you're joining us on Zoom too, just with your scratch paper or whatever materials you have that are close to where you're learning from this morning. So Let me grab a couple more boxes of crayons. Go ahead and get started with your drawings. Thank you so much. Let's give our friend Hannah a little quick round of applause for passing out. Draw a tree. I did not forget about you. There we go. You're welcome. And for our friends who are joining us online, while you're doing this activity too, I would encourage you to explore the Project Learning Tree website, plt.org, just to see some of the activities and resources that are on this webpage. Now that you've learned a little bit about the online resources from Project WET. For our friends as they're drawing, I always say that stick trees are a-okay. You don't have to be Picasso to do PLT. And also make sure that we are, like I see some of us are doing a great job of it, labeling those parts. And I'll give you, let's say 60 more seconds to make your final drawing additions. I know we could color all morning, and you can take these with you if you want to, you know, keep dabbling this morning later on throughout the conference. They'll be like, which session gave you all this stuff? Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at your drawings. If you want to pair up and share at your tables, or share in the Zoom chat, or share via, if you are comfortable sharing your webcam this morning with where you're joining from, you can share it on Zoom here to share with other friends that are joining on the Zoom land, or you can describe your drawing or the parts that you labeled if you're not comfortable sharing your webcam this morning. Share what parts you labeled and what your drawings looked like. These are really good trees for like how little time you have. So I've done this before and they're like not there's never bad drawings. Some people you're like, yeah, let's talk after. Okay, well, I can kind of hear that our conversations are going great in here. Just for the sake of our time together, let's center ourselves back on the conversation. What does anyone want to share some of the parts that they labeled or remembered from the parts of the tree? The roots, branches, trunk, leaves, bark. Anything over here? Buds, yeah, and they flower and then they also leaf out. Here's a fun fact about tree buds that you all should take home, is that what season of the year do buds form on the tree? Yes, here we go. Let's snaps for Colleen. She's just the like winner of the day. Yes, buds actually form in the fall on the tree. They don't form in the spring. They open in the spring, but they actually form after the fall leaves fall off the tree. So you can go home and stump your kiddos and your loved ones. So stump, get it? I'm here all day. So we labeled the parts of the tree, and this is part of an activity called The Closer You Look. So if we had more time in the full lesson plan, what you do is you then take students out. I love to do this with just a piece of paper like we did, and then a clipboard, and flip it over and have them draw another tree that's in their place. So at the park, at the playground, right? What parts did they forget to draw, right? When they are drawing a tree from a physical tree that they can see, what parts did they actually remember about a tree that they draw from memory, right? And then learning some of that language building skills, right? Like trunks, bark, branches, learning about how there are different types of trees, like deciduous trees or evergreen trees or coniferous trees, right? All of those different ways that you can, start to introduce those concepts while also doing, right? What did we do? We did fine arts, right? With drawing. And if you're doing language, right? English language arts and learning language there too. So, right, all of the activities in Project Learning Tree and Project Wet are meant to be what we call interdisciplinary. And so that means that they are built to hit up multiple standards areas or multiple subject areas. So while PLT and WET are very great for science and teaching science clubs or teaching about nature in that context, right? Teaching about the environment can happen in all of our contexts or all of our subjects. So some more resources that we have from Project Learning Tree and Project Wet in Nebraska is that you can find out all of this on the Project Learning Tree website, so plt.org, and also our Nebraska Forest Service website, which is just nfs.unl.edu. But we have tree trunks, and so these are educator trunks, very similar to trunks like Game and Parks has, or the State Museum Morrill Hall at partners across the state of Nebraska that house the flagship Project Learning Tree, Project Wet curriculums, as well as extra materials like tree cookies or tree identification booklets and other things that help you use the lessons with your students. So currently we have 7 regional partners across the state in Ponca, Omaha, Columbus, Lincoln, Hastings, Trenton, which is outside McCook, and Gering or Scottsbluff. But we're going to add a few more this next year as well in Ogallala, Ord, Valentine, and hopefully Beatrice too. So you can get easy access to the curriculum through those programs. We also provide what we call educator workshops, like what you're experiencing today, that are focused on getting you the curriculum and the skills that you need to teach confidently about the complex environmental issues with your students all across the state. So you can find our workshop calendar on this page as well. And so what it shows us is just upcoming workshops going all across the state, in person, online. Some things that you might be interested in is we have monthly educator workshops. So I do what I call Teach Outside, which is on the third Thursday at 3:30. So lots of T's. And we do just a 90-minute little webinar where we do an activity or two like we did today. And then we have a partner across the state who advertises their programs that might be available for your students at that time of the year or in that geographical region. We also have leading little learners in nature. This is like an early childhood educator focused workshop that's on the last Monday at 1 p.m. Central Time. And both of these workshops are completely free as well. So you can attend and just come once a month, experience an activity or two, and get ideas for how to implement environmental education in your work with students. And then, of course, besides all of these other educator workshops that we could do across the state, we're happy to come to you. So if you have a program in your part of the state or a set of programs, right, that really want more site-specific help with how do you implement EE in your community or in your area, myself or one of our regional partners across the state is more than happy to do a training at your site for your staff. And all of our trainings online and in person are automatically accepted by the Department of Ed for those child care licensing requirements. So if you've got staff that are like, I need to get hours in, send them to me. We also run field trips in the eastern part of the state in Plattsmouth and Lincoln. I'm happy to come visit classes. I'm housed in Lincoln, so I can come in person for free within a 2-hour radius of Lincoln, Nebraska, but then we can also come virtually via Zoom to anybody in the state. We work closely with 4-H to correlate activities to Nebraska 4-H activities. And then we, of course, have a monthly newsletter that we do to just promote all these opportunities and other programs like grants or other things that are available. So while we wrap up our time together, what I'd like to do is pass out, if I could have some helpers again, just one of our evaluations, and you can just take it and pass it fill that out with your information, and I'll send this evening the full lesson, either this evening or next week. We'll see how the drive goes back home. But I'll send you a full copy of The Closer You Look and the incredible journey that we did together today. So you'll get some curriculum to take home with you. It won't be a full activity guide, but it'll be something to get you started. And then also, I wanted to share this with you, and I will share these resources digitally as well on the conference website for our Zoom folks. But I have just a quick little action planning worksheet, right? Like we talked about at the beginning, EE is a journey, right? It's not just something that you do once and you're done and you're certified and you'll never try to do, hopefully, another workshop or another thing again. And so what I'm going to pass these around for is for you to take home and just really think about throughout the rest of the conference today and your conversations on your ride home. Just try to sort out those thoughts and create a plan for your program or your teaching about how you're going to improve environmental education in your work in the next year. And it just helps you put things into columns and get ideas about, I want to do X, Y, and Z. Well, here's A, B, and C that we need to do in order to get there, whether that's attending a workshop or coming to a virtual training or two, or just applying for another grant for, from one of the other great partners that's here to help get you materials or plants or other supports. So, and if you have any questions about other resources, I'm happy to, connect to the dots, as are so many people who are here today. So if I can't help you out, if you're like, I'm looking for a club on this topic or an opportunity talking about this, if I can't help you, I probably know somebody who can, or knows somebody who knows somebody who can. So with that, I know that we're just about at our time together. So I'm happy to answer any questions and hang out for a bit. If you want those curriculums appear in your inbox, please make sure you fill out that evaluation form and then bring them back to me so I can take them home. You can also take those and bring them back to me throughout the conference. I'll be around here this afternoon. And then one other thing, I know I'm still talking, is that I wanted to plug is that we do have a facilitator training happening this fall in October. So if you're somebody who loves Project Learning Tree, Project Wet, and loves environmental education, this is for partners from across the state, and they can be anybody. So just anybody who has working with education and wants to help us train educators in these curriculum programs. And so if you attend this training in October, it's a 2-day training at Ponca State Park. And we'll do PLT Wet and Wild, and you would be certified to help me or independently lead these sorts of professional development events for educators across the state. And so if you're a center director, you could become certified in admin and facilitator, and then lead a workshop for your own staff to get them their childcare licensing hours each year. So just another opportunity. And this information will go out in our newsletter here this month as well. So, and it's on those web pages.